All right, I'd like to welcome everybody here to our first CIM University event for 2021. My name is Scott Abbott, and I'm the Executive Director of the Sacramento Running Association. The Sacramento Running Association is the organization that puts on the California International Marathon, which is why we're all here. The California International Marathon, welcome to Crazy Town and the road to CIM. Thank you for joining us on that road to CIM. And for those of you guys who don't know or haven't been a part of the event before, it's one of the CIM is one of the nation's premier marathons. It's renowned for its great participant experience and first-class participant experience. And the organizers of the event take great pride in trying to provide a platform for achievement for every participant, regardless of your level, whether you're running your first marathon or your fastest. And a big part of that is not just the race day experience, but it's being on that road to the event with all of our participants to help them have the best possible experience they can, the best possible performance they can at the event. And a big part of that are trying to provide as many resources available to the participants. And this CIM University is a big piece of that, one of the many resources that we provide, and maybe one of the most important. So thank you guys for being here with us tonight and being a part of that journey to the start of CIM. These CIM Universities are monthly education series. We've got expert panelists that will speak on a lot of different important topics that will help you prepare for this event to have your best performance at CIM. Today's topic specifically, our first installment of the CIM University, is titled Best Practices for Marathon Training. And really, we've got a great experienced panel of coaches. They're going to go over some really general guidelines to help you kind of navigate the training plan, the training process of getting ready to have your best possible performance at the California International Marathon in December. Training programs have kicked off, so this is a great time to really start talking about that about training and things that you should be doing in training to help you have that great performance. We want this to be an open conversation tonight. We do have panelists, but there's a lot of people obviously on this Zoom. In the past, we've done this in person and then broadcast it live. What COVID has brought us over the last year is new opportunities. And this being able to do it over Zoom, I think opens the door to more people to be a part of this, a more fruitful conversation. And so we're really excited to be able to do this. So a few ground rules about how kind of things are going to work on Zoom. We've got everybody muted right now. That's just the best way to kind of manage 100 plus people on this Zoom. Our panelists, I will kind of facilitate this conversation with our expert coaches. And if you guys have questions, though, that's a big part of this, and we want to answer those questions. If questions come up, I definitely will set aside time at the end, maybe 15, 20 minutes at the end to answer questions. But if questions do come up about things that are being talked about, you can ask questions, and we will try to get to those questions. If not, we will address them at the end. There are two ways in which you can ask questions, and we can get those done. One is through the Zoom. You can use the raise hand function. At the bottom of your screen under the reactions tab, there's an opportunity there to hit raise hand. If you click raise hand, we'll see that your hand's up. We'll unmute you, and then you can go ahead and ask your question to the panel. If we leave your hand as raised, just keep it raised, and we may get to you later or at the end of the session. The other thing you can do is you can post questions directly into the chat. We will be following those. Some of them will answer directly in the chat if they're really, really simple, or we'll ask them to the panel and they'll get a chance to address those questions either as we're going or at the end. And then finally, we are going to, this Zoom is being recorded, and then we will broadcast it on our YouTube channel, the Sacramento Running Association YouTube channel, and that will be online. So if you are watching this after the fact, you can go ahead and post questions in the comments on the YouTube, and our coaches will go back in and we'll answer some of those questions over the following days after this CIM University. So lots of opportunities, and that's a big part of this is we want to be able to answer your questions. We're going to talk about some general guidelines, but ultimately we want to make sure we get your questions answered. So with that, I'd love to kick off this CIM University best practices for marathon training. And where I'd like to start is by introducing our great panel of coaches that we have that are going to be talking to you about your marathon training. So I'm going to call on them and they can introduce themselves. And let's start with Sean up there. He's in the right-hand corner of my screen.
What's up, guys? My name is Sean, and I work here at the Fleet Feet stores in Sacramento, Davis, and Elk Grove. We're super lucky to have CIM as our hometown marathon, and we're also very, very lucky to have the official CIM training program every year. Many of you are probably in our program, and some of you may not, but what we do is sort of set the tone for CIM training for the season. So we just kicked off both our in-person and our online programs, and our runners are taking on their third week of training now. We have runners of all different levels. There's so many of you on here tonight. I'm sure some of you are probably taking on, your first marathon ever. Frankly, might be a little intimidated. Many of you may have done a bunch of marathons, and this might be your first marathon since the pandemic, right? But either way, we have resources for you and answers to your questions tonight. Without saying too much right now, one thing I think would be cool is if you're planning to run your very first marathon ever at CIM, just post it in the chat. Sometimes it's nice to just see how many other people out there are kind of taking on that same challenge as you are. Also note that CIM has a great first-timers group, for first-time marathoners as well. So go ahead and pop that in the chat and get some camaraderie going to kick this thing off.
Thanks, Sean. And next on my screen up here is Jeremy.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jeremy Donati. I'm a coach with Fleet Feet. I've coached with Fleet Feet for 5 years. It will be my 8th CIM this coming season. So I will be training alongside my trainees. Running is just a passion of mine that I've come to love over the last 10 years. I have a professional career. And so I just enjoy helping people achieve those goals, whether or not it's a first-time marathon or trying to achieve a PR or a BQ. So I'm excited to be here, excited to start the new CIM training. And Scott's on mute.
I'm sorry. Thanks, Jeremy. And next up, Julie.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Julie Burgess. I'm a coach at Fleet Feet Davis. This is my first year coaching with Fleet Feet for the CIM program. However, I've been blessed to run CIM the full marathon twice, once as the half duo and then once as a 4-person. So this race is really special to me. I look forward to helping you guys get through your first or however many marathons this has been for you. And I'm really excited to be a part of this panel tonight.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. As you can see, we've got a really great, experienced group of coaches that, has worked with runners of all levels. So regardless of you're on here running your first year fastest, we've got people that can help answer those questions. And so let's dive right in. I think the best place to start, I'll actually maybe start with you, Sean, is really just talk about the importance of a training plan and just the value that has in terms of following a plan, a systematic plan, and the kind of the dynamics that are in play in a plan that help really prepare you best for a marathon.
Yeah. I think that's a great place to start as well. Taking on a marathon is not an easy task, right? I mean, it's a long way to run, while, all of us certainly are capable, you want to make sure that you are preparing yourself adequately for the task at hand, right? I don't want to trivialize it. 26.2 miles is a long way to run. And so having a plan, a training plan that guides you, to that start line and ensures that you get to that finish line, is going to do a lot in terms of making sure that your marathon experience is good, that you avoid injury, and that you're getting the most out of what your body is capable of. So for us, when we think of a plan, we're thinking of, a multi-week, really calendared, organized training schedule. So for us here at Fleet Feet, our training starts 18 weeks before race day. There's a lot of other plans and formats out there, but generally you're going to need, several months of training, I would say, to adequately prepare your body, in a gradual fashion to take on that distance. So what a training plan is going to give you is the periodization that you need to, build upon your progress gradually to avoid injury and allow yourself to take on more and more rigorous running activities as you get closer to race day. It's also going to make sure that you're not doing too much. I think, in some things that you might take on in your life, being over-prepared is not a bad thing. But in running, sometimes our urge to be over-prepared can actually cause us to, maybe put ourselves at risk of injury. Some of those aches and pains start popping up and we can get derailed from that eventual goal. So a training plan will also kind of put a ceiling on the amount of activity you're doing. And once you're on a plan, the plan has all of those kind of specifics figured out, right? So all you have to do is show up, complete the assignments, and trust the plan. And if you're training with a training group like ours or a coach or following a plan that you maybe obtained somewhere else, you know that all of those things are figured out. And as long as you can stay consistent and stick to that plan, you will be well prepared to take on the marathon.
That's great. Yeah. I think another big part of kind of the plan and really what it elicits is it really systemizes or kind of creates a systematic process for that theory of progression. And Jeremy, maybe you can kind of speak to how that plan really progresses people along.
Yeah, I always like to, when we were in person, Scott, we always had two sides of the training plan. One side took us to the half marathon and the other side took us to the full marathon. And I really think that that's important to kind of think about. A lot of people start for their first marathon, some of them haven't even run a half marathon. So the idea that you're setting out to just train for a marathon is that's a lot to think about. So Fleet Feet training is set up that essentially, we have a halfway mark. We have a half marathon built in. We do our long run with Run the Parkway with SRA. So it's built in a way so that you can, even if you are a runner that only runs, at most 4 or 5 miles at a time, we can take you from that and bring you through our training plan all the way to a full marathon.
And maybe Julie, you can maybe speak to that. What about that first timer, that beginner right now that is, maybe looks at the plan or has seen a plan and is a little overwhelmed that, hey, I'm 5 or 6 miles, maybe the most I've ever run. And I'm looking at a plan that, not only has me working up to ultimately 26 miles, but maybe even in a few weeks, I might be running 12, 14 miles. And that seems a little overwhelming. Like how can you address that?
Yeah, so it does seem overwhelming and, we've all been there, but our bodies are amazing things, right? And so with the right kind of training plan and given the right duration, so like Sean said, in our plan, it's 18 weeks. So given the right duration and kind of the right intensity, so even if it's a walk, run plan, or even straight running, our bodies adapt. So because our bodies are amazing, if we take it through that process, our bodies will adapt. So be in the moment. Don't look at it and say, I have to run 26.2 miles. Look at your training plan and say, wow, this week I have to run 12 miles. Run those 12 miles. Be in those 12 miles. Don't look at it as I have to run 26.2 miles in 18 weeks. Be in the moment.
That's great advice. And you mentioned adaptation. I mean, really adaptation is it's like a performance enhancing drug, really. I mean, that's really how this whole thing works. And you start moving along and your body adapts to it and it can all of a sudden do more. And I think the thing we've been kind of circling around here at the beginning of this talk is I think that over the long run and that's obviously an anchor component of any training plan. And that is where you really see that progression. Importance of the long run and why that's in the training program and how that progression and adaptation works with the long run specifically.
Yeah, sure. You froze up there for a sec, Scott, but I think you tossed it over to me. Yeah, I can talk a little bit about the long run. So when we think about the training plan as a whole, we're always thinking about it as sort of like a stairway towards that eventual goal, right? So if you think about stairs in a building, right? Like, you have to get to the top floor, but you need to do that one gradual step at a time, right? So when you think about the long run, it's those small steps eventually leading you to that longer distance. So in our plan, for example, we'll start, around 8 miles. Other plans may start lower or maybe a little bit higher than that. But you don't need to start with high mileage right off the front. Like Julie said, like you have so many weeks to get to that 26.2 mile distance that you don't want to jump in all at once. You want to, make sure that you're getting the quality runs in early on. That will set the foundation for those longer runs as you get, like the word that Scott used, adapted to the rigors of training, right? So the long runs also allow us to practice our aerobic energy delivery system. So that aerobic system is responsible for allowing us to perform an endurance activity. So any sort of long physical activity that you might do, kind of thrives in that endurance zone. So you have to practice, performing work in that zone. And that's what we do during the long runs, right? So on race day, your body is it's like a well-oiled machine, right? It can run all day if it's given the proper fuel and you've kind of trained it to be able to do all of that in its sort of endurance energy delivery system. And because it's being so efficient, you won't run out of gas. You'll just be ready to cruise for that whole distance. So, but you can't get there all at once. And so that's why we do it, in gradual pieces, one step at a time.
Thanks, Sean. And what about like pacing on long runs? I know that's a question that a lot of people have, and just like, is that one where you're really trying to practice your marathon pace the whole time you're out there, or is that one you're trying to take easy? Jeremy, maybe speak a little bit about pacing, as it relates to the long run specifically.
Yeah, so there can be a component of the long run that has your goal marathon pace, but a lot of your long runs, 80% of your long runs are going to be a nice, easy pace. You should be able to have I go out on Saturday morning and I have running friends and we go out and we talk the whole time. So you should be able to have a conversation through your long run. Your heart rate shouldn't be, it shouldn't be that high. You should be able to have a full conversation while running. If you are training for, a second or a Boston qualify or a PR, there will be components of the long run where you do want to practice your goal marathon pace. And those periods of the long run will progress. You might start with 3 or 4 miles of the long run being at goal marathon pace. And that might progress up to, I top out at 10 miles at my goal marathon pace. But there's all sorts of different levels. And if you're just starting out as a first-time marathoner, you won't necessarily have any, goal marathon pace in your long run. It'll be just about getting miles and time on your feet, just having your body become acclimated to being on your feet and running for long periods of time.
Yeah, I think that's
Oops, sorry, you froze up there, Scott. You want to
Sorry,
push that
yeah.
switch again?
Yeah, sorry. No, that was a great point that was made. And I think the other thing I think is a big thing with the long run, and I think it goes back to the plan, and people kind of look ahead. And a huge question that we get a lot is about how far you run on your longest long run.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
so
we do see that a
I know
lot.
we addressed that question about, is 18 miles enough for some plans, or is 20 enough if I'm trying to run 26 miles?
Yeah, we do see that a lot. And, you know, I think when we think about, you know, the way that our bodies work, I think one of the things to remember is that, you know, our bodies are always adapting to the stress that we put them under to achieve more than, you know, the stress that we put them under, you know, at a prior time, right? So let's say we run that 20-mile run or that 18-mile run. At that point, our bodies are like, I need to be prepared to run 20 miles, 22 miles, 26 miles. Like, we're doing some serious mileage out here. And so you're building back stronger each time. So, you know, if you give your body the stimulus of running, you know, over 20 miles or even 26 miles before race day, you're really starting to prepare yourself for something much longer than a marathon, right? So, you know, the research has shown that once you hit that 18 to 20-mile distance, the physiological adaptation that you're getting at that point is really sufficient to you know, run for the duration of time and the distance of a marathon. The other thing that the research has shown is that once you break that kind of 18 to 20-mile barrier, you're kind of in the zone of diminishing returns, where each, you know, additional long run that you're doing beyond that 18 to 20-mile threshold is contributing less and less to your race day fitness. But the risk of injury at that point and, you know, the cumulative fatigue on your body is actually spiking your risk of injury quite a bit faster and to a greater degree than your fitness is increasing. So it is sort of a cost benefit analysis for a lot of runners, but based on our experience here coaching athletes, you know, 300, 400 athletes every year, you know, the kind of 18 to 20 peak for long runs proves to be successful for most athletes. And, you know, the research has really borne that out as well. So that's what we stick to.
Yeah, that's an excellent answer to that question, you know, and I do think that there's an element of that. I think we're all type A and we want to try to ensure a result for ourselves. And also we get excited about the progression and we get excited about that adaptation. And we get to the 18 and we get to the 20, and then we kind of want to keep checking those boxes. But I do think that that's some of the magic of the marathon. Like, that's why we buy the sticker for the car that says 26.2. is there is a little bit of that unknown, and that challenge comes in those final 5 or 6 miles. Really, a lot of people say that's where the race begins. And a big part of what training is doing, as you said, Sean, is to try to create efficiency up to 20 miles so that you can really be prepared to take on the challenge of those final 6 miles. And, you know, I don't know how many people I've talked to that had rough marathons or they were hurt before the marathon. And I learned that it's like, well, I had this great 23 miler a few weeks ago. And I kind of want to tell them, like, well, that was your marathon. I mean, you get, you know, that was your day. You know, you only get so many of those. And even that 20 miler is really pushing those upper limits. And it's important that we recover well from that, but then not try to go and tap that again multiple times or go beyond that. And I think you answered that question really well. Julie, staying with the long run and just kind of runs in general, I think this idea of, and a big part of it, we talked about joining it having a plan and having that systematic plan to follow really helps keep the bumper rails towards the goal of finishing a marathon or running your best marathon. But also, what about running with other people or being a part of a training group? They talk a little bit about the esprit de corps that comes with running with other people and how that can help spur you along and be advantageous to your training.
Sure. So when I coach, you know, the very first day that I get our runners together, the very first thing I do is I make everybody introduce themselves and kind of pair off into groups where they think that they might be the similar pace groups, right? So that they can go out and run together. Not only that, but I also make sure that they're kind of looking out for each other for safety reasons and making sure that everybody's doing well during those runs, because I'm only one person, so I can only run and keep my eyes on these runners, you know, once or twice throughout the run. But having a partner or having multiple partners out there while you're running really keeps your spirits up, because if I'm having a bad day out there, or if I need something, somebody's right there saying, hey, Julie, keep going. We only have a couple more miles to go. Or if I have forgotten a gel or something, they say, oh, hey, I have an extra one. Here you go. There's always a buddy out there that keeps your spirits up. Because you know what? They're going through the same process you are. So they know the pain that you're going through, or they're having the same kind of great run that you're having. So having a partner is very important to the process. Although there's having individual runs are good too. So if you're an individual runner, that's okay too.
Yeah, that's the beauty of preparing for the marathon, is that there are so many miles to be run over the course of 18, 20 weeks. And, it's important to share those miles with other people. I think they help keep you accountable. But then there's a lot of those lonely miles that are important too, because you're going to get into lonely stretches on marathon race day where you're going to kind of be in your own head, and you want to have had to power some of those out by yourself as well, to really kind of, be able to callous your mind to be able to handle some of those lonely miles en route to 26.2. So that's great. We've been referring to the training plan. And again, as Sean said, we have people here that are part of our official training program that here in Sacramento, but we also have an online training program. If you want to access that, there is a link on our website on runcim.org on the training and education resources. You'll see a link to the official training program, and there's both in-person and online options. So if you aren't here in Sacramento and you want to still looking for a plan to follow, that online option could be a great option for you. But even if you don't, there are so many great plans online that you can, follow that prepare people for marathons. What's great about the plans that we put together is they're definitely customized to get you ready for CIM and the dates that are associated with preparing for this race. But I just kind of wanted to answer that. A few people asked that question. And we're going to reopen that online training program online, so that for people that do want to join that, it will be open after tonight. Let's move on from the long run. Let's start talking about speed workouts. I know it's another big anchor to that training plan. There's usually at least one, if not two, in most training plans, speed workouts. And I know it's kind of a catch-all word, speed workouts, but really it's, we talked a lot about the paces of those long runs, but now there's other workouts that vary those paces. Sean, talk about the design of those, how they're placed in the training plan and the purpose of those.
Yeah. I think oftentimes the speed work in the training plan can be one of the newer things to folks who are running their first marathon. And I think also, even those of us who've done like a lot of marathons, a lot of running, we're always looking for like the secret, right? Like what is the, what's the perfect workout, or what's the thing that's going to get us to that next level? And while there's no one thing, I do think the speed workouts do have benefit for everyone, even if, speed or, isn't necessarily your primary goal, right? So not all of us are going to be winning the race. Like, there's all those fast people up front, but most of us are just, running because we want to beat our personal time, or we want to cross this off our bucket list, right? And so the speed work is really there to, once again, like provide another stimulus for your body to get stronger and more capable. So I talked earlier about, wanting to stay in that aerobic zone, while you're doing your longer and longer activities. The way that you allow your body to create a larger bandwidth in that aerobic zone, basically to do more work and to do work longer while your breathing's under control, you're still able to fuel your body properly, is really to stress that top end of where you're not able to, control your breathing, where you might start feeling that burning sensation in your legs. The speed work is really there, designed to kind of widen that aerobic band, so that when you are running your marathon pace for those longer distances, you're obviously running a little bit slower than you are in your speed workouts, and it should feel very relaxed, very comfortable. And for those of you who are looking to get faster, speed workouts are useful on race day because they're pushing you to become, to work on your running form, right? To lock everything in, to really get those efficient movement patterns down, to build strength and explosivity. I think hill repeats are certainly part of that speed workout category. And, the best way to become better at running hills, and there are some hills on the CIM course, is really to practice running on hills as well, and run them harder, run them faster, really exaggerate, the effort level, the speed, the pace that you're going to be doing on race day, so that when you're out there on race day and everything's a little bit dialed back from the intensity of your speed workouts, it feels very in control. You feel capable. You've done something harder, and you've done it consistently over a long period of time. And so, you're not intimidated by, the need to run a little bit faster than your easy run pace, or power up a hill.
Yeah. And I think that's great. I think the idea of stretching the band is really, really important. We talk about you getting those long run paces, and you start to feel really comfortable. And then if you want to be able to start to increase, what that bandwidth is and your pace range, that speed work really kind of helps push that one end. And then it kind of makes that marathon pace actually seem a little bit slower. You talk about some different types of workouts, and we'll get into those in a second. But Julie, maybe you can address, like, let's just say someone's like, hey, I don't really care about speed. Like, I just want to finish a marathon. I want to run 26 miles. I don't care if it takes me, how long it takes me, as long as I make it under the cutoff. So what do I need to do speed workouts for?
Sure. So regardless if you are the fast burner or you're at the very back of the pack, we all have what's called a fast twitch muscle. And so what those are responsible for are the sudden burst of energy. And so when we build those kinds of muscles up, we are improving our running economy, right? And so with that, we're expending less energy. And so regardless if I'm running at the back of the pack, it now becomes an endurance run for me. And so the longer I'm out there, the longer I'm going to need that kind of energy, where I'm expending less energy so that I can finish that race. So now I have 26.2 miles. It's going to take me a longer time. So we kind of need that, right? And so that's why these speed workouts are important, even for those that are at the back of the pack. Regardless if it's going to be, it's going to take you 3 hours to finish the race or 6 hours, we need those muscles to kind of help us with our energy to get to the finish line.
And Jeremy, maybe speak a little bit about the importance of pacing and how the speed work types of workouts, those different types of workouts that you do in those speed workouts, really kind of help you dial in your pacing and really help with pace discipline.
Sure. In our plan, we actually start with a 5K time trial. And the 5K time trial is geared, helps people kind of refine what their pace should be for, say, 800s on the track, or, 200s or 400s, or, mile repeats. And it goes all the way, we use a calculator that, I'm sure SRA has as well, and Sean can share. But it lays out your paces for all lengths of distances. So it's actually quite amazing, because I've run time trials and then run those distances to see if it's actually accurate. And a lot of times it's very accurate. So those calculators can tell you, okay, your easy long run pace, you ran a 25-minute 5K, your easy long run pace should be 9:30. Your speed work, for 400 or 800 intervals should be at a 7:30 pace. So it's giving you that whole variation, the whole gambit of running paces that you would actually use through your training program. So pacing is really important. And I think knowing where you are is really important too, because if you know where you are, you know where you can get. And if you know where you are, you know how you can run and the pace you can run at. First time runners come to me and they're like, I want to qualify for Boston. And I'm like, okay, that's a great goal. What's your Boston BQ time? Oh, it's 3:05. Okay. Well, do you know what that means? That means you have to run a 6:50 marathon pace. What have you done? So knowing your paces actually, I think, make running the marathon more tangible and make it more accessible, right? I actually haven't even qualified for Boston yet. And so knowing where I'm at and knowing what my paces are and knowing what I could expect from a marathon, you're not going to train for one pace and end up at the marathon running another. It just doesn't work like that. So knowing your pace actually kind of sets some expectations, I guess you could say. I'm not gonna train at a 3:30 or 3:40 pace, and I'm not gonna run a 3-hour marathon. So pacing is very important. I think in knowing your pace and starting out program and starting out your training, knowing your pace and knowing what you should be running your long run at and what you should be running your speed workout is really important to know.
Right, yeah, thanks. And you referenced a calculator there. We'll try to get that posted, a link to maybe that calculator, either in the chat or if not afterwards on YouTube in the comments. We'll get that a link to that pace calculator, because that's really important. Honestly, everyone on this Zoom, just by being here, you're obviously really serious about your preparation for the marathon. If you're able to follow a plan, systematically, you're able to stay healthy, you're going to be in good shape when you get to that starting line. And really, one of the things that can derail or also ensure a great performance is your ability to be disciplined with your pacing. And I do think a few things we're circling around here between how you manage your long runs and then how you address doing different types of pace work during the week. Some of the speed work and the faster stuff is really just helping you dial in pace and dial in what your marathon pace is. And then if you can be really disciplined with that on race day, if you've prepared properly, you're going to have a great day. People who prepare properly and then pace goes out the window on race day, then they can derail a lot of good preparation. And in one of our later installments at CIM University, we'll dive in a little bit more on how to manage your race and how to pace properly. But a lot of that stuff is practiced through those speed workouts. Okay, so we talked about the long run. We talked about the speed workouts. I think those are the anchors of a lot of training plans. I think that is what gets everybody excited when they look at their weekly plan. It's like, hey, how far is my long run? What's my speed workout look like? But also there's a lot of other work that needs to be done. And so maybe kind of address all the other miles, all the easy running that you're doing, kind of to bridge the gap between those long runs and those speed workouts. Sean, maybe you can kind of start with that and how those, what place those have in the training plan in preparing for the marathon.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did see a question pop up in the chat about this also. So I'm really glad we're covering this. Sort of in between easy runs are really what connect the whole plan together, right? So the speed workouts, there's a lot of focus on that, and of course the long run. But in between, there's just a lot of, sort of like honestly homework runs. I think sometimes we call it that, and we're joking, but a lot of times it actually does kind of feel like homework. But as we know from, school, like doing the homework will prepare you, for the exam, just like doing the in-between runs, those easy runs on your own throughout the week will prepare you for race day. And the reason is that you're practicing your craft, right? So your job is to become as well versed in running as possible over the duration of your training plan. And by practicing it over and over and over again, running faster, running longer, running many days in a row, you will be prepared for the actual practice of running for a really, really long time on race day, probably at a pace that you maybe could have only dreamed of when you started out the program. So it keeps the stimulus on your body to continue to build fitness. It keeps that stimulus high. That's sort of a physiological benefit of it. Again, it's practicing your aerobic energy delivery system. That's another physiological benefit of it. And I think if you're working with a good coach or within a group training program, there's also a lot of opportunity in those, everyday sort of easy runs to practice your running form as well. So, we can always get better and more efficient in our movement patterns. And I think those, kind of daily easy runs are very helpful because you don't have, a speed assignment that you're working on or a long run where you need to think about fueling and those type of things. You're just cruising along and you can spend that time really getting in touch with your body and thinking about the way that you're moving if you have some pointers from, maybe a coach, you can start, integrating some of those things into your running as well. And then I think just the resilience that you build, mentally as well as physically by running multiple days on end, is something that you can fall back on in some of those later miles in the race, or even, weeks down the road when your training gets, a little more rigorous. You've done it for so many weeks on end, and it takes dedication. It takes resilience to stick with, something so consistently challenging. And so that's something to, think about as you're doing your easy runs, and also to fall back on race day, when things get a little bit challenging.
Yeah, and I think that, we talk a little bit about intensity through speed workouts, and we talk about volume through the long runs, and really adaptation occurs when you have intensity, when you have volume, but you also need frequency. And it's not enough to just say, oh, I'm going to do this long run once a week on the weekends and maybe throw in a speed workout. What is the brass tacks? If we want to get down to brass tacks here, someone who's super busy or someone who's a very beginner, they don't have a lot of time. What is like the bare minimum that you guys would like to see as coaches or as you're advising people, that they would need to do kind of to bridge the gaps from a frequency standpoint? How much running would you like to see them doing between those speed workouts and the long runs? Jeremy, maybe you can take that.
Yeah, even if you're just training for your first marathon, I really think you need, the speed work, you need a long run, and, at a minimum, maybe 2 other days of just easy miles on your feet. We have, in conjunction with SRA, Fleet Feet's training program, we have a beginning training program, we have an intermediate training program, and we have an advanced training program. And really, it starts out, the beginner is 4 days a week, the intermediate is 5, and the advanced is 6. Really, I don't think you can run a marathon just doing your speed work and just doing your long run. It's just not possible. Or it's going to be really...
You can do anything, but we're talking about people on this call. It's about optimal performance.
That's right.
And I think that's a good call. Like when you start talking about 4 days, then that means you're running more than you're not. And
Correct.
That's, obviously 7-day week, you're running basically every other day. And I do think I agree with you. That's kind of that bare minimum, and that helps bridge the gaps and provide support for that long run. If you're stacking 14, 16, 18 mile runs without any other running or not a whole lot of other running, you're not really providing enough support for that. And usually that's going to lead to injury. So Julie, do you have any thoughts about this in terms of those kind of, as Sean called them, homework runs?
Sure. There was just a question on the chat asking if you miss a homework run, should you make it up? So we're all human. We all have lives. We all, we get busy. And so should we make up those homework runs? My opinion is no, because our end goal is to make it to that finish line. And we all want to be healthy when we get there. And so if we start trying to stack up our runs, even if it's these little homework runs, we're only setting ourselves up for failure or the potential to get hurt or injured. And so my opinion is you skip that run and you just go on to the next one.
I would agree with Julie. I would just say I totally agree with Julie. You miss a run or a homework run. The likelihood, in the totality of the 18 weeks and how many hours and miles that you are running in those 18 weeks, missing a 3 or 4 miler on an easy day is nothing. And, you want to stack it with another day and you go out and you run like 6 or 8 miles. And on that 6 or 8 mile day, you pull a muscle, you do something you shouldn't. Now you've derailed your whole training because you were overly concerned with the minutia of like the schedule and not the totality of what you were really trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I think that's a super important point. I think the most important thing in all of this, and it's come up a few different times, is consistency and following that plan. And you're right, the totality of the work. If you look at 18 weeks of work and all the miles that you're going to run between your long runs, your speed workouts, and all those homework runs, those all combine to aggregate to be what prepares you to run your best marathon and be in shape. There's no one workout, no one run that matters. I know we all get excited about that 20 miler. At the end of the day, if you didn't do a 20 miler and you only did 16, you're going to be fine, especially if you did all the other work too. So again, I think that all of those, and we've kind of used the analogy in the past of it's, getting ready for a marathon is like putting together a puzzle. Imagine you're putting together a puzzle of the Golden Gate Bridge, and each run that you do, every workout, every long run, every homework run is just another piece of that puzzle. And ultimately you want to place enough pieces of the puzzle so you can step back and see that it's the Golden Gate Bridge. If you don't get every single piece down there, it's okay. And no one piece is more important than the other. Yeah, maybe those long runs are super important, and they maybe are the corner pieces or the edges. But at the end of the day, all of those pieces add up to give you that totality of work. And the most important thing is just being consistent and keep plugging away, and not get overly caught up in the plan, especially if there is an injury or something, you miss your 18 miler. Don't mean the next week you go try to squeeze it in somewhere right before your 20 miler, or maybe just do the 18 miler and the next weekend instead of the 20 miler, and that's okay. So I think that's a big part of this, and and I think that's kind of rings true through all this when we start talking about adaptation and consistency, from a philosophical standpoint. Those are all really, really great answers. We've got about 15 minutes left. I definitely want to start to get to a lot of these questions that are out there. We'll try to circle back to some other things, but I know there's been some questions that have been thrown in the chat. Let's start to get to those. And again, if you want to ask a question to the panel, not through the chat, go ahead and use that raised hand function on your reactions, the reactions tab. Just hit raise hand and we'll call on you. Otherwise, we'll get to them on the chat. There was a question here, guys, about gym, weight training, cross training. That always comes up. Jeremy, why don't you just kind of handle that question as it comes up?
So that's always a big concern to people. If people are regularly at the gym and now you're having to focus on running, people get kind of overly concerned about keeping up their other physical activities. And you have to acknowledge the fact that you're in a training cycle, right? And as part of the training cycle, your focus is on running. It's not on weightlifting. It's not on cycling. So those activities need to take a back seat to your running. Having said that, you do have cross training days in most of the schedules out there. There's cross training days. So if you are a cyclist, go ahead and cycle. What I would say is don't take up any cross training that you haven't already done, right? Don't go out and decide that you're going to be a swimmer. And swimming is actually a great cross training, but I would go out there and probably drown. So you just don't take up any cross training activities that you haven't already taken up, that you're not already doing in your regular exercise pattern, So I would just don't go too crazy on the cross training. The cross training is just a mechanism to keep you active and keep your muscles moving. It's not a mechanism for gaining more fitness, right? Our fitness is going to be gained through our running, through our 4 days, our 5 days, or our 6 days a week.
Yeah, and that cross training can also help if you do get a nick or something and you got to take some days off. That's when the cross training can really come in. It can kind of help you maintain some fitness until you're able to get back out there and run. But ultimately, the best way to get better at running, especially for something hyper specific like a marathon, is to run. And we want to try to make it much of that as specific as possible. And you don't want to try to add in too many extra stimuli, especially as an avenue, like Jeremy said, to add fitness. If it's one way to just kind of supplement, that's okay. But we're not trying to add fitness there. So these are all great questions we got on here. There was a question about, which I definitely think is local focused right now for sure about the air quality and options that people maybe have. And if they are starting these training plans and these homework runs and they're missing out on a few, what is the best way to kind of deal with, either using cross training or finding other avenues to run, treadmills and different things, but also just kind of dealing with the failure to launch a little bit right now on these training plans with some of the smoke issues that invariably are coming up this fall.
Yeah, I can jump on that one real quick, and you guys feel free to back me up there. But I live in the Sacramento area, and it's super smoky right now, and just not healthy to exercise outside, right? So I think in some ways we can get a little too caught up in like the need to achieve, right? So going out there and running in the smoke may seem like a good idea in the near term, just because you want to check that box on your training plan, right? Like you want to get that run done and, move that much closer to your goal. But, the short-term benefit of, running in unhealthy air really doesn't pay off in the long term. There are all kinds of physiological, issues that can come up from doing that. So my recommendation would be to think about the cardiovascular and muscular stimulus that you were going to, achieve from any given run, and try to replicate that indoors in a place with, filtered air through some other kind of activity. So an example would be for a homework run, for example. Let's say you were assigned to run like 45 minutes to an hour, something like that, at a nice easy pace. Think about how hard you would be breathing for that. Your heart would definitely be beating. You'd be breathing, a little bit harder than when you're at rest, but you wouldn't be totally out of breath. To me, that sounds like, maybe like an online yoga session that you can do at home. If you're doing, a speed workout on any given day and it's smoky outside, consider transitioning to maybe some like a high intensity interval training workout of the same duration. And for the long runs, that can be a little bit difficult, but you can potentially work in maybe a couple different indoor exercises, that you can do using videos that you can find all over YouTube or on Fleet Feet's YouTube channel, for example, and just think about total time duration of activity. And, the thing to remember is that your body doesn't understand mileage. It understands time duration of physical stimulus, right? So if you can replicate at least the time and the intensity level, you may not be getting the running in, but you're at least performing some of the same stimulus to your body.
Good. There's some questions a little bit about, and I'll just kind of address this. Somebody asked about, and I think we basically just answered it, about the treadmill and doing obviously, I think running outdoors on road over varied terrain, it's the most specific, of what you're going to be trying to do on race day. So that's what you want to try to do. But if you do have to supplement some stuff on, especially some of those easy runs on treadmills, I think that works. It can work very, very well, especially if you're busy and you just want to get those runs in the evening or something like that. A treadmill can work for that. If you are local, we also, one of our partners, California Family Fitness, they're offering a 1 month right now special for people, and that could be an if you don't have access to a treadmill and you live here in Sacramento, that's a great opportunity as well. Sign up with California Family Fitness, and you can use their treadmills for one of their 1 month specials. There's been some questions about injuries a little bit and dealing with injuries. That will be one of our next CIM universities. We actually have the next two. One is about fueling and hydration, which is a huge part, especially for long runs. When you guys are practicing your fueling and hydration on those long runs, we're going to really address that topic in depth at our next CIM University in September. So stay tuned for the date on that one. And then in October, we're going to really address injury prevention. And part of that, dealing with injuries, dealing with aches and pains, we're going to deal with some running form stuff in there as well. So that's a good one where we'll deep dive on those. But in general, I think dealing with injuries, and how you make those adjustments to your training, it's probably a lot of that same theme about maintaining consistency and just getting to the line healthy. But, maybe Julie or Jeremy, can one of you guys hop in about just making those adjustments to your training if you are dealing with aches and pains?
Sure, Julie can jump in too. She can unmute as well. There we go. A lot of people, I've trained with a lot of people and they're like, oh, I have an injury, so I guess I can't run CIM. And the reality is not one specific, you can have an injury and then still be able to run CIM, but you just have to kind of modify your training plan a little. If you have to take off, a couple of days or even a week during your training plan, your race will be different, but you still will be able to run it. It's Julie, I don't know if you want to jump in here. You just have to be, you kind of have to be a little flexible with it. You can't be, a lot of people like, oh, I missed a long run and I'm injured now. I can't run. And it's
I always tell my runners, listen to your body, but listen to your body honestly. So what I mean by that is when you get out there, you're going to be sore from running. I mean, the longer you go, the more sore you may be after a long run. And you may think that you've pulled a calf muscle or, but listen to your body honestly. Is it a pulled calf muscle or are you just really sore from a long run? Go home, foam roll, take a day off from your short runs. Rest is very important. That's a very important part of this process. After you've rested, listen to your body. Is it really injured? And if it is, then maybe we need to talk about pulling back from some of your training. But if it's not, then progress with your training.
Yeah, that's good. And also go back to that, I think my puzzle analogy, again, our goal is to place enough pieces of the puzzle so that we can see that it's the Golden Gate Bridge. If the injury, and I think you always err to the side of caution, we want to get to the start line healthy. And if we're one or two pieces short of where we would have been, but we get there healthy, we're better off than just trying to lay those extra pieces of cloud in the corner of the puzzle just to place those pieces. But then you get to the start line, you're not healthy. So at the end of the day, I think we do want to stay healthy. If the injury is so great that you don't lay enough pieces of the puzzle to tell that it's the Golden Gate Bridge, that's where you make the hard decision of like, hey, I don't know if I'm fully prepared for this. But ultimately, your job is to do enough training to lay enough pieces of that puzzle to get a good picture of it so that you're prepared for race day. And I think that's kind of just that general theme here, that no one workout is all that important. It's about staying healthy, being consistent, and keep plugging away through your progressions. There was a really good question here, I think, and it touched on something you talked about, Sean, we talked about the quantity of time spent running. And I think that actually doubles back on the long run discussion. If you're running the long run slower, and you're out there for, a long time, that really what you're doing is you're callousing your body and preparing it for those final miles of the marathon. Those last miles of that long run really callous you for those final miles of the marathon because you're running actually slower than you're going to be on race day. But also the question about on our easy run days or our kind of homework days, can we break those up? Instead of a 45-minute run, can we do 2 20-minute runs? So maybe talk about the philosophy there of like the 40-minute run versus the 2 20-minute runs, or the hour run versus the 2 30-minute runs, the pros and cons of both. Sean, you want to take that?
Sorry, guys, I was on mute. Yeah, that's a great question. And I think, the temptation there maybe is to do some math and think about, maybe the total amount of minutes or total amount of miles in a week and just kind of reshuffle them around. But when we write a training plan, we're really thinking about single session duration and intensity, right? So one run of 40 minutes does not do the same thing to your body that 2 20-minute runs do. And 2 2-hour runs are not the same as, one single run, right? So, while there are certain situations where certain athletes may see some benefit from, multiple training stimulus in a single day. So an example of that would be like a long run in the morning and then like a shorter shakeout run in the evening, or doubling up on your speed workout days. In general, most athletes, will not see a lot of benefits from that. And so you want to give your body the duration of stimulus at the intensity level that is written on your plan as accurately as possible. So, I understand that our schedules are busy. So my recommendation in a situation where maybe you don't have like an hour to run, consider running for 45 minutes or 50 minutes. Try to get as close to the intended duration as possible, rather than breaking the total duration into 2 much shorter sessions. The closer you can get to the duration and the more you can replicate the intensity, the more, the effects on your body will be accurate to what we were hoping to achieve by assigning that on your plan.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I think, I would say even go as far as this, like if you can't get in the 45-minute run, you're almost better running 36, 37 minutes rather than 2 20-minute runs, And so I do think that there is a time and place for that, like you said, that shakeout run, sometimes on a speed work day to go on, kind of flush the legs out. We want to get away from too many junk miles. You want to try to have purposeful miles. When you go out, there's a purpose to them, and those 40 to 45-minute runs on your easy days, they really are that, like you said, that aerobic stimulus that you need. Because I mean, you can take that to an extreme. If 2 20-minute runs is as good as a 40-minute run, why not 4 10-minute runs? It's like, well, there's probably not a ton of stimulus there. And so really at the end of the day, you're really trying to get that good solid run to get that aerobic stimulus in. If you want to, pepper in some easy kind of 20-minute, 25-minute shakeouts, like in the morning, just kind of get the blood flowing. If you're going to do a speed workout that evening, I've seen that be effective. But at the end of the day, I think that was a really good answer to that question. There's some quite a bit of questions about the plan still. I think that, there are some people on here that aren't a part of the official training program. Again, there's that online plan that you can sign up for on the website as well. But again, if you aren't having access to either of those plans, either our in-person or the online plan, again, there are plans that you can follow. And again, we started this by saying it's important to have a plan and really have that systematic approach to your training. I guess I just kind of want to do see if we can get one more question in here. In that plan, people talk about kind of switching between maybe a finish or an improve, or switching between, again, our official training program has finish, improve, and perform. Toggling between those, is that okay? I mean, or are you just kind of like on your track? Once you're on the finish track, you're a finish runner. Once you're on the perform track, you're a perform runner. What are your kind of thoughts about that?
Yeah, I always say, like, give it enough time for you to actually see whether or not it's working, whether it's enough, whether it's too much. But there's certainly no issue in realizing, like, okay, I'm responding really well to the training. Like, maybe I can take on a little bit more. But just remember that it takes our bodies a little while to actually adapt and absorb the fitness, right? So generally, you don't want to make any decisions about increasing your training load as a whole without first seeing how your body responds to, like a complete 4-week cycle at the level that you're at, right? But, some of you may be feeling like right now, what you're doing is actually overwhelming. Like maybe you're in, week 2 or week 3 and it just feels like too much. I would say be patient, give it the full 4 weeks, maybe 5 weeks before you make any decisions about whether it's too difficult. Your body will adapt. It will adapt as long as you're giving it enough time to recover, right? And if you're following the plan, there will definitely be a recovery day on that plan. And if you're treating your body right and recovering from those runs, following the plan as it's written at the duration and intensity and frequency that it's written, your body will adapt. And at that point, you can make decisions about whether you can do more or need to reduce how much you're doing.
Okay, last question. And then, like I said, if we are going to post this on YouTube, and if you watch this and you have other questions, go ahead and post it in the comments of YouTube, and our coaches will answer it. And before we get to this last question, just in case people start to slide out, I just want to thank everyone for being here. Also, a big thank you to our panel for the work that they did, and the expert advice that they've been able to provide. Again, if you're still looking for training plans or to join the training programs that we have, you can find that information on our website. And it'll link to the Fleet Feet site. So the last question here, just there was a question about warm-ups and just the role that those play both on speed work days and your other days. How important are warm-ups and cool downs on your easy run days, and also then how those play into on the speed work days. If one of you guys wants to take that, we'll make that the last question, and then we'll see you guys again on the YouTube. And then again, thanks to everyone for being here.
I think both Jeremy and I can both chime in on this. Warm-ups, again, end goal is to get us to the start line and to the finish healthy. And so warming up our bodies before any kind of a run is really important.
I couldn't agree more. Look, if you're looking at speed work, right, you're not going to come to a track and immediately start running your 400 pace. You're going to warm your body up. You need to start, getting all your muscle groups warmed up and just, going through some dynamic drills and things like that. Really important to do that before you actually start your workout. Otherwise, you could end up with injury. I mean, really moving from 0 to speed, without having some sort of interim kind of warm up could lead to injury. So, and warm up across the board is very important for that, I think.
That's a great point, guys. And I think just to like specifically related to the homework runs, on those days, it is important to do some dynamic drills, right? So we're thinking about things like walking on our toes, walking on our heels, like high knees, butt kickers, those type of things. However, on those days, keep your duration to the duration that's assigned, right? So if it says an hour, it's not an hour plus, 15 minutes of warm up, 15 minutes of cool down. It's an hour, right? However, if you see your speed workout day, generally it's written just with the speed workout portion on most training plans, not just the Fleet Feet plan, but most plans across the board. And just know that you will need to do some additional running before and after to make sure that you're really primed for that much more intense activity.
Great. Actually, I did miss, I believe, Shika. Shika, do you have a question? I just unmuted you. I missed your raised hand there.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, so I mean, I'm just kind of following up on the air quality and smoke stuff. And I know that Sean covered it or someone covered it earlier. I'm just kind of wondering about, was there anything specific or different about, like if I'm in the in-person training program, is there anything specific or different about the virtual online one? And if so, are those functionalities available to those who are in the in-person program? So if in case, like if we end up going to an area with less smoke, for the weekend and stuff, and if we're in another area, like, do you know if there's any resources for us to just kind of be able to train?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think Shika, probably what you're talking about is like, okay, let's say I go out of town and I want to do my speed workout somewhere else because I'm worried it's going to get canceled, or want to do my long run somewhere else because I'm worried that the smoke will cancel it. In that case, that would be a great opportunity for you to call the store. I'll chat with you personally and we can make a plan. And then, yeah, the online program does offer resources for those folks, the same types of coaching that you're receiving in person. So, yeah, I would say like for some people, it makes more sense depending on their schedule or the location they live to work with a coach online. Remotely, for others, I think it makes more sense to work in person. But in general, if you are in the in-person program or any in-person program anywhere, communicate with your coaches. They'll be more than happy to explain ahead of time, what we have planned, and you can take that information and complete your runs on your own, or indoors on a treadmill, those type of things. And we're always here as a resource here at Fleet Feet. So you can always give us a call and I'll chat with you directly.
All right. Well, thank you again to everybody. Great panel. This first panel, best practices. Our next one is going to be fueling and hydration. That will be in September. Stay tuned for the exact dates and Zoom link for that. That's all. You can follow on the Facebook page as well. There's a link to that. And again, you can go online. Hopefully tomorrow, that online training program will be back open again. So check back on that. So if you're still trying to join the online program or the in-person program, you can do that. Check tomorrow and we'll get those links up and running. Again, thank you to everybody and good luck in your training. And hopefully we'll see you out on the trail or next September at our next CIM University. Thanks, guys.